Hello everyone, this is Antony Scandale, and I'm the author of my book, Let Go, A Little Guidebook to Freedom. And with me today is just a awesome character. I wish you would all just meet her one day because she's definitely authentic. And with these podcasts, I like to bring people who are very authentic and they speak their truths. Vicki McLeod joins me today. She is a coach, trainer, and consultant who is from Maple Ridge, BC, and she is an award-winning entrepreneur, TEDx speaker, poet, and author of a new book, #Untrending, which I think she'd just rather just have it called Untrending, but you got to look at it to see what that's about. But one thing I did forget to mention, that she is a passionate foodie, and we will talk more about that. So, Vicki, thank you very much for joining me today. How are you today?
I'm great. Thanks, Antony. It's really a pleasure to be here. And it's always odd to hear yourself introduced. I sound so good.
Well, and this is what
I've
I
lived
mean.
a long time. That's part of it. I often say to people, that's the thing with the bio. When you've lived as long as I have, it gets really long. You don't know what to cut out, So, yeah.
I'm glad we are gonna talk about that, because you did say something about that in your book. In the last few pages about life, and that you think is actually kind of long, and I do agree with you with it. But before we get to that, I'm just going to say that I have read your book, Untrending, which is a field guide to social media that matters. I've read this a few times, and in fact, when I met Vicki, it was at a few months ago at an Inspired Victoria event hosted by David Nat Fisher, and I was literally 24 hours away from boarding my plane to Italy, so I needed some content to read, and I'm glad I did. And now I have you here speaking with me. You have been, in your own words, you've been rocking the marketing and communications business for 25 years now, and now you've written your first book. So please tell me a little bit about your business and what inspired you to write your book.
Okay, so the business is called Main Street Communications, and it is a communications consulting business started in the early 90s. So really, in that kind of work, we've seen a lot of growth and change. When I started my business, I was convincing clients really to get online. So I would have these conversations where I would say, we really think you ought to think about getting a website. This is like, say, 1992, 93, 94. And they would say, we don't need a website. We've got brochures and business cards. And I'd say, no, really, trust me. And then what I found over the years, and eventually we got most of our clients online through websites, and we're doing all kinds of other communications and marketing work. But over the years, when social media sort of hit, I found myself in the same conversation, often with the same clients.
Right.
Hey, we really need to think about getting you into social media. And the clients would say, we don't need social media. We've got a website.
Right.
So this is really, scarily familiar. So we've always kind of in the business been a little bit ahead of the curve, just in terms of what was coming. And that's just partly to stay in our professional integrity and to be offering our clients really good value. So I got into social media, and I kind of became an advocate for social media, getting clients. I was working a lot with municipal governments, nonprofits, and then I did a ton of work with small businesses. I worked with about 300 businesses in the province of British Columbia over about a 2 to 3 year period. This is a few years ago, about 5 years ago or so. And I realized that in my kind of eagerness to get people online and engaged in what I saw as a really important communications and marketing strategy for their business, and generally, I think a human communication tool, right? That people were being overwhelmed by the demands of social media. And there was this real division occurring between how professionals were approaching social media. A lot of people came into the field who didn't have any background in marketing and communications or broadcasting or anything that was really relevant to social, but they were putting themselves forward as experts, and people were getting bad advice. And they were also very overwhelmed with the amount of advice they were getting. And what started to happen, I noticed, was that there started to be this real view of people as transactions rather than people. Transactional relationship rather than true relationship. And it really bugged me. And I felt like I had contributed in some way to it, because I'd been so excited about getting all my clients onto social media that I had been neglecting the need for them to be able to be privately peaceful. As the line I like to say is, how can you be privately peaceful and technically productive? So I kind of wrote the book as a way of addressing this issue of how you can do social media in a way that is meaningful and that matters, and maintain kind of your personal peacefulness as well as your personal integrity, doing it from a place that is, to use your word in the introduction, authentic. It's getting to be a bit of an overused word, but I think there is this thing of like relationships are real, whether they're happening online or not.
Yeah.
And we forget sometimes in our eagerness to sell people on our product, service, or causes that we're dealing with humans, and humans have limitations.
Yeah, exactly. And right away in your book, you mentioned, and this is a quotation from you, it says, "It is about empowering you to use social media as a way to make more in your life." And I skip ahead. This is not about increasing engagement or reach, growing likes or followers, or improving your online metrics. Right. This is about you and the precious minutes, hours, and days you spend on your devices, communicating every minuscule nuances of your ordinary human experience. It's about untrending. It's funny because, like,
you're having trouble with that one.
No, and I'll say that she writes how she thinks and speaks. So, and I find that very authentic and I love it. But I'll also say that, going back to that, a lot of people are using, the hashtag trending, to get just notoriety, but you're saying it's about taking a different approach to use social media. So go ahead, please explain that.
Yeah. And so it's funny, like just a funny story about the untrending hashtag is that, of course, I use the untrending hashtag when I'm quoting my book or talking about concepts in the book, right? Yeah. Which, of course, is the connotation out there online is really that untrending is like not a good thing. It's kind of like not cool, or it's sort of like, I did this embarrassing thing, untrending, and I'm using it. But when the book first came out, untrending was actually the trending hashtag.
Oh, really? Really?
Which I thought was like really ironic, right? It was like, to me, it was just sort of kind of hilarious. And I actually took a screenshot of it and used it in some social media workshops I was doing at the time, because I just found the irony quite, it was just amusing to me. But also that, so people, we are humans, we love imitation. We need, in many ways, we're always looking to each other for signals about how to be or what's coming next. Or so that we tend to kind of be like pack animals or herd animals. We kind of go where the crowd is. And I think there's good, solid reasons for that. And there's good sociological reasons for that. And that's not my field, but there are. And at the same time, what I know from my own life is that being willing to just be who I am has been a real challenge, like to stand apart from the crowd, to sometimes do the unpopular thing, to make and even when I wrote the book, many of my colleagues were like, "Vicki, we're not that crazy that you're writing this book. Like you're kind of telling people that metrics don't matter." Well, I'm not really saying that. Like, I'm just saying if measures are important, this isn't the book for you. And measures are important when you're doing ROI for your clients. Absolutely. I have no argument with. I mean, I am one of those, I think I use the term that digital marketing is kind of asshole-ish.
You did say that in your book.
And I myself am one of those asshole-ish people. Like, that is also my business, right? But it's to separate that out from really what are we getting in relationships for. And I think everybody has experienced, what I call now Facebook fatigue or social media fatigue. I am now so tired of someone friending me, and then I find out within 5 minutes that they friended me so they can send me a message about their product, service, or cause. So they're not really interested in me. They're not really interested in knowing anything about me. They're not really, and this is my time and my life I'm spending. And I'm responding to those, even the time it takes me to unfollow that person and usually I reply back and say, "I didn't accept your friend request in order to just buy your product, service, or cause. So I suggest we unfriend or we remove the relationship, or we get into a conversation about it." I've had a couple of really good conversations and built relationship that way, actually, with people. But I just think, wow, we're humans and we need to respect each other.
We do. For me, I remember one thing that my mom, she's always said this to me as a kid growing up. She still says this to me. I guess she feels I haven't grown up yet. But, she says, I don't care if you love me or hate me, just respect me. And, it's a very true sentence. And I'm glad that she said that. I mean, of course I love my mother unconditionally. Yes. But it does come down to, like, if you can't love somebody, meet them halfway and just respect that person. But of course, you have to respect yourself first before you can really start respecting others and then eventually love others. So,
and I think that this is, part of what happens to us on social media is that or online, we sometimes forget that there's like a disinhibiting factor in social media and online. For some reason, people are compelled in a way to kind of blurt things out or to just, and I think on one hand, I think that's great because maybe it's a true authenticity that's showing up. So maybe we're being more of ourselves.
Right.
But this disinhibiting factor can also fall into when people are being disrespectful, or when they're being, and that this is a whole other territory, that I don't cover a lot in the book, but I think about a lot, which is, how do we treat each other online, and how is that reflective of how we would actually like to treat each other?
Precisely, yeah.
Are we secretly harboring the desire to bully, and so we do it online because we're disinhibited? That kind of worries me, right?
Yep.
So I just really wanted to be another voice. I just wanted to be, with the book, I really wanted to have a conversation. And I always say, and I say to my colleagues especially, I don't believe this is the whole pie. My book is not the whole pie of social media. It's not the only book you need to read. Right. It's a piece of the pie. It's a piece of the conversation around social and digital, and especially for those of us who are in the marketing and selling business using digital. I think we have a responsibility as leaders in the field. We're setting the standards. We're the ones that are out there telling people you have to have, three posts a day on Facebook and 5 posts on Twitter. And, we're setting these crazy parameters or protocols that we're telling people how they're supposed to do it, but they're not really within human boundaries.
Oh, I see.
The average human, small business person actually can't do what most experts recommend. And the experts that are recommending that are recommending it. They have teams of people who are doing it.
Right.
So the person that's telling you, here's how to do your Instagram account and make it all beautiful and do all of these things, that person has 3 people doing that.
Right.
So I might say, well, that's the expert's advice. I'm going to pass that advice along to you, except for it doesn't really respect what your core human needs might be, or what you're actually capable of doing, or how you really want to spend your time.
Right. Well, and in terms of that, like in terms of spending time on these media platforms, I mean, there's so many now. I can't, for me, I prefer to use basically 3 of them. I use Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and I just can't see myself using others at the moment.
Right. Yeah.
With the exception of this podcast. But when you're with these people who need, some sort of marketing, in social media stuff, do you tell them, okay, maybe just try 3 or just stick to 1? Like,
I usually try to find what I think is the ideal one. I think it so much depends on where your market is, and I prefer, even depending on the kind of client I'm working with, but to really think about it more in terms of community. So what is it that you have to offer a certain community of people that you're going to find online? Those people are somewhere online. We're all online someplace, unless you have a very exceptional market.
Or Pyrex collection.
Yeah. So, you know the kind of people that are going to be interested in your service, in your podcast, for example. So then it would be about, okay, where are those people hanging out online? How can I offer them value? What is it that lives in me that is going to really connect with those people? We were joking a little bit before, and I was saying, I know my book isn't for everyone. I geared it towards a certain kind of market. Not surprisingly, fundamentally, that market tends to be middle-aged women.
Right.
Who are in some kind of transition or in business, who are interested in reflecting on their lives. However, I've gotten the most meaningful moment I've had with the book, to be honest with you, was a group of young men who came to me, and by young, I would say, probably somewhere between, 20 and 25.
Right.
At a conference where I spoke, and they came up afterwards, literally with tears in their eyes, saying, I know I need to get offline more. I know I need to manage my social digital, and I don't know how. Can you show us how to do it? Yeah. And these were 3 men who all work in digital marketing. And I was like, my heart just broke in that moment, because I thought, first of all, that needs to be the next book, which is what I'm working on, is the how.
Okay, good.
How do we reclaim our territory then when there's much demand to be online? And, I'm thinking this is a very specific issue for particularly a demographic of young men. It has to do with gaming. It has to do with online pornography. It has to do with the way of dealing with relationships that doesn't require face-to-face.
Yeah.
And so and that's even a big, that's not my territory either, but there is this big issue. And when these young men came, I just thought, wow, that really is the big question.
It is. And, David Nat Fisher, who I had on yesterday, we were talking about that too.
Friend.
Yeah, he's a great person. Yeah. And he mentioned that a lot of men don't have that one true support friend kind of thing, and that's very scary, especially that we are already connected on the internet, and you think you have a friend overseas or even in just your next door neighbor, but it seems to me that we're too much engaged in how people see us. You know what I mean? We're not really being authentic and reaching out somebody
Yeah.
and say, hey, how's it going?
Yeah. It's interesting because in the upcoming book, one of the themes that I deal with is this, I'm still working on the research side of it, but is that I think as humans, we experience disconnection anyway. So even before, and I have this unique perspective because I really lived half my life analog. I'm completely a digital immigrant. I was, in the mid 80s, I was already married and divorced twice. Right. So I'd already lived by the time the internet came along, I'd already lived more than half my life in an analog way. People were disaffected then. Men were lonely then. People felt a difficulty communicating face to face, struggled to share their deeper truths. That's part of the human condition. And I kind of see that we've had this condition, this way of, we have not really evolved maybe to the place where we're really comfortable being vulnerable with each other. We're getting there. I think the world is much more that way than it was when I was a young woman. Mm-hmm. But I do see that we had already this sort of, rise in drug addiction and alcoholism and disaffection, and then enter the internet. Yeah. And now we have this perfect vehicle to distance ourselves from each other and yet appear to be connected. Yeah. So it's like there's a false promise there of some kind. And that's what I'm exploring in the book. It's part of the beginning of the next book that I'm working on now. But it's that idea of, the human condition is one of disconnection. The internet isn't going to give us that. No, it gives us the illusion of that. And maybe it could. Like in Untrending, I'm kind of saying, well, maybe we could use it in a way that's really meaningful. Like maybe we could use it that way, but we're really not, at least not in large numbers yet. So that, I don't have a lot of answers. I want us to explore the problem together in a conversation. Yeah. I can't wait to see what you come up with your book. So thank you. The Untrending, as you know, is a tiny book. The next one is full length, so it's a lot bigger taking a bigger bite. Right. Yeah. Like, oh my gosh, writing a book is hard work, right? It is hard work. It takes a lot of time and effort and money and discipline and focus and maybe discipline, focus, concentration, all analog skills that are becoming more and more difficult to play with as we are so easily distracted, as am I. Like, I'm not giving up my smartphone anytime soon. Well, exactly. For me, when I was writing my book, I had to have at least 2 or 3 people not have like a whip and chain behind me to make sure that I, snap myself back. No, it was more like every week we would chat at a specific time. How did you do? How much progress did you make? And you need that support group if you're trying to create a book or anything. But when it comes to your own emotions, you do have to just kind of decompress and find someone that you love and trust. Yeah, for sure. And I find writing generally to be a kind of, it is a process. Like there's an emotional component to it, a psychological component where you're really digging in to self. Yeah. And revealing self often in what you're writing. And so that part, totally is so important to have a supportive group around you and people who understand that that's part. I think if you're writing the real thing, it depends on what you're writing. Maybe not so true for, complete nonfiction topic, but I work in creative nonfiction and do a lot of, you read in the style. It's a prose poetry style that I write in, which requires a certain dig. It does, and it is loaded with a lot of wonderful poetry and some stories. Her book is Untrending by Vicki McLeod. It's about 56 pages. Yeah, it's an easy read. It didn't get you all the way to Italy, I'm sure. Probably got you. I'll say this though, it has visited Italy though. So I know, I'm very excited about that. I should ask people to take pictures with the book in the different, that's countries. What I should have done. I should have been in front of the Santa Maria del Fiore in Florence, on top of it, of the dome there with it. Next time I'll be going again soon, I'm sure, but maybe we'll do that. Yeah. But she has this book Untrending, and inside there's also a bunch of pictures that if you are inclined to take out some crayons or pencil crayons and color them. Yeah. So how did you come up with that idea? Like what? Well, it was interesting. I have a graphic designer that I've worked with in my business. She's actually been with us pretty much the whole time, so the whole 25 years of the business. And she's an artist, of course, first and foremost, and went into graphic design, as many artists do, because that's a great way to pay your bills. So we have been talking about another project, which I don't have quite off the ground yet, where she was going to do some illustration work for me. And when I was working on the book, I had a wonderful client, another client, who was a graphic artist, and we were talking about the form of the book. And I said, I'm just kind of imagining it with some kind of line drawings or something. And she said, well, you could put like little illustrations on the pages
Yeah.
as the chapter headings. And then when I met with Cindy Farnsworth, is the name of the woman that illustrated the book for me, I met with Cindy to talk about it. We just both almost at the same moment went, adult coloring, like why don't we do? And so the interesting thing about the illustrations also is that they are all from photographs of mine, other than I think the hummingbird is what Cindy's, but I said, well, here's a photograph I was thinking would go well with this. And so she took those and she sketch the photographs of the mussels on the beach that are around the poem, the joy of missing out experience when I'm Jomo, when I'm out in the wilderness in that part of the book. That was a photo I took on the beach where I was on this personal retreat off the grid. And the Buddha is actually the Buddha that's in my bathroom, so it's very personal in a way.
So sorry,
go ahead.
Sorry to interrupt. So let's talk about that really quickly, because you do need to take some time to take photographs. So my question to you now is, how often do you schedule time away from the internet?
I've gotten really good at it, partly because I feel like I need to, walk my talk, right? So I go off the grid at least once to twice a year, so I'm going in 5 days coming up. Now I'm going to be up at Loon Lake on a retreat with a group of women, and we'll be offline up there. So we have access if needed, and we have phone numbers for people's family emergencies, which is always the big concern when you're, especially with a group. So I do try to get at least a week to 2 weeks a year where I'm not connected at all. But I try to really contain my time. So I try not to get online in the first hour of the morning, and I try not to be online in the last hour of the night, for sure, like daily. And I'm getting really good now at just scheduling the time. Like I'll work like something like this that I'm doing with you. So I'll be like an hour or so. Yeah. I'll check Facebook. I'll be on there for 15 minutes. And then I'll go to do the next thing. And then it's like a 2-hour chunk of time. And then I'm on for 15 minutes and check. It's a challenge because part of my business is getting people digital. So I'm checking in on clients online. Right. Part of my own business is promoted online. So there's lots of good reasons for me to be on there. But I am finding it actually surprisingly, this is now my third year, I guess I'm going into now with the retreats, of doing this. And I'm finding it easier and easier. Also, though, and this is part again of the theme of the next book, is I do a lot of things that involve me physically. And that doesn't mean I'm not an exercise freak or anything, but I paint, I cook, things that require my time and attention and require my hands to be actually actively engaged in a creative process of some kind.
Right.
And those are some of the skills that I think we've lost a bit of with the digital world, and they're reemerging in different ways. You're seeing like painting parties and these kinds of things that are showing up. And I think it's a call. People are being called. The whole maker movement is really interesting to me. I'm going to do a chapter in the book on making. So there's just an emerging thing that people are doing in response, I think, to the screen time. So for me, that's really important to have something else to do that's meaningful.
Yeah,
right?
and then you can come back and just say, this is what I did, and this is the steps I took to get there.
And you can put it on your Instagram story, like I do Instagram stories of my art journaling or whatever, and it's just kind of, this is an example of something that's an offline activity. Yeah. Important to have that focus.
For sure. But it's funny because in your book, you also say in chapter 9, the joy of missing out, JOMO, the social media is a time suck and it can become an all-consuming black hole. I don't know, like when I read that, an all-consuming black hole, it can suck the life out of you big time.
Yeah.
For
have
me,
you experienced that yourself?
I have. Even when I was in Italy, I'm a huge Edmonton Oilers fan. All my friends know that. And when I was in Italy, they were actually in the playoffs. So here's me, a rabid fan. You think, bad timing, right? And here I am on the internet trying to find a streaming link of the game at like 3:00 in the morning, Italy time. And I kept thinking, I don't want to say this out loud, but I hope they don't win. I need to sleep. Because they were going to probably get to the next round, and I had like another 2 weeks left of Italy, so I had to literally just say, you know what, if I wake up, I wake up. If I don't, I don't. But yeah, it can consume the life out of me, like the internet. Right. So I had to just go back and go back to bed, and especially when they lost, I was a little bit upset, but I thought, my girlfriend's gonna be so happy that I can sleep now.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
But it can get really I don't know, it sometimes when you get to that point where it's sucking the life out of you, you kind of have to like regenerate, and like in what you do, like you said, that you go out and you do your retreats and get just back to nature.
Yeah, and for me, it's also, there's a part of it that has to do with nature. Christina Crook, who I quote quite a bit in the book, she's a friend of mine. Right. She wrote the book called The Joy of Missing Out. She's a wonderful writer, Canadian author.
Yep.
But she's very physical, so like she talks about for herself, like she likes to row and run, and so it's whatever the thing is that you can do that connects you back to, we're physical beings, and I like to believe, it's my belief, that we're physical beings for a reason. We manifested here on this planet in these bodies to experience being in a physical form. And so on one hand, I find all of the geekery really exciting, like the possibilities for virtual reality, the artificial emotional intelligence scares the hell out of me, but there it is. It's kind of, part of me finds it exciting, but another part of me finds it kind of terrifying.
It is.
Because I do think, we are physical beings, and we need to honor that somehow. We need to be human while we're in our human form. I don't know what comes next. I'm going to assume it's not human form, though.
Probably
Whatever
not,
it is, our bodies will be gone. This I know, right?
Yeah, and we have to stay somewhat organic in a lot of ways with that sort of mechanical thinking, but still, like, we still need to be organic. And on that subject of organics, let's move over to a little bit of, because you are a passionate foodie.
Yes, I like
and for me, I like food, but I'm not a passionate foodie. But I can only imagine if I were to come to your home, what you would be cooking. So,
what are you imagining?
I don't know. Like, I like my Mexican food. I like my Italian food as part of my heritage.
Yes, I love Italian too.
But for me, like when I come home, like or to my parents' house, it's that essence of coffee. If there's no coffee in the house, I don't feel comfortable. So when I'm at home, like I always right away put like a pot of coffee with the mocha, the little espresso. Then I can really feel, I can unwind. So for yourself, like what is it that you like to prepare to make you feel at home and that you're relaxed and that you're calm? Like
there's so many different kinds of food. Like for me, I would say one food that really makes me feel, I guess, comforted and connected is pie. Because, pie is troublesome to make. People who are really good at it, it's not. But, it took me a lot of years to learn to make pie well. And it became a mission. And this may sound, I don't mean to sound super old-fashioned here, but when I got married, one of my husband's fondest memories was having peach pie. And it was tied up with his grandfather and his childhood on the prairies, and having, peaches would come in by train from the Okanagan in BC, like, in those days. Yeah. And so I decided that I wanted to learn to make really good peach pie. And I had never been a great pie maker. I was always a very good cook, but I have a heavy hand. I'm good at bread. Pie requires this certain kind of lightness, right? So, so I actually, a friend of mine for my bridal shower gave me pie making lessons. She's now gone, and I think I mentioned her I get credit her in my book. She's the last mention in the book. She died last year, but she gave me pie making lessons, and so I learned to make really good pie so that I could make my husband peach pie. So for me, it's tied up in a lot of things. It's tied up in me letting go of a certain feminist stance that I had all my life, and not to say I'm not still a feminist, I am, but I realized like I had to climb down off that fence if I was going to actually do this gift for my husband. Right. And that was a big change transformationally for me in terms of relationship, but also it's tied in with her. It's tied in with his story of his grandfather. It's tied in with putting the effort, like clearing the kitchen, cleaning the counters, getting the pie crust made, making whatever the fruit. Sometimes it's peach, sometimes it's blueberry, doesn't matter. But I'm actually doing a pie today I'm going to a friend's house for dinner. So I'm I made a beet salad with, roasted beets and garlic sauce. And I'm making potato salad because it's summer. You got to have that. Yeah. Probably going to do a little chicken. I might do some prawns. And then we're going to have a blueberry pie for dessert.
Oh, wonderful.
So that to me, like that's kind of, and even these friends have just moved here from Alberta. So to me, I'm going to see them for the first time in their new apartment. And it's like I'm bringing dinner. I said, like, I'll bring you dinner. To me, that's the way of, and so all those things require me to be offline, except when I take the pictures for my Instagram stories, and then I'll post those pictures and say, especially if the pie turns out, you can look for it on Instagram later.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But is it safe to say that perhaps you'll have like your own sort of cooking show. Is that a hint,
I don't
maybe?
think that's not
No?
for me. But you know who you need to keep your eye on for that is my colleague Rebecca Coleman. I don't know if you met her at social media camp this year. I know. I don't know. Oh, you weren't at camp because you were flying out, right?
That's right.
Okay.
But she
When we
wasn't
met-
there
right,
that
right.
night, though.
No, she wasn't, but she's somebody to keep your eye on. She
Okay.
just wrote a cookbook called Aquafabulous, and
Okay.
it's a vegan cookbook. It's really wonderful. It's about egg replacements, using aquafaba as an egg replacement. And she
Okay.
is doing all kinds of YouTube. She is going to be, you watch her, she's going to be a foodie star. But we became friends. We met online and became friends through our shared love of food and our shared perspective on social media. And she's someone I've just watched her grow and evolve. Very cool.
Right.
Yeah, definitely would recommend you keep an eye on her, and she might be a great person to have sometime on your show too, because
Definitely, I'm gonna have
this
to.
whole thing going on. Yeah,
Yeah.
cool.
Well, so thank you very much, Vicki. We're approaching almost 30 minutes here, and time flies by. But talking with you, it's wonderful. Thank you for joining me today. So her name is Vicki McLeod, and you can find her at vickimcleod.com, and I guess that's VICKIMCLEOD.
Yep, that's
She
right.
has a lot of stuff on her website, including a lot of social media workshops. She has a blog and the podcast. And are you going to do the podcast again?
I might. I've been thinking about it. I love podcasting. I think for me, I like the auditory. That's really my thing. And
Right.
so I might. I'm holding on. I'm doing a lot of writing right now with the second book on the go. Plus, I'm doing weekly essays, and I have a column in the newspaper twice a month. So there's a lot that I'm doing content-wise right now. But
That's understandable.
it's definitely there. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. And then if I do, though, I'll have you as the guest.
Perfect.
And then you can tell me more about Italy and food in Italy.
Excellent.
because
I will.
That
Definitely.
was
I
my
will.
great. I did a bucket list item. I took a cooking class in Italy last year. That was one of my.
Where did you
So I
go?
learned how to make pasta.
Where did you go to do that? In what city?
Padua.
Oh, in Padua. Okay.
Yes, yeah.
Oh,
We
wow.
were in Florence and we went up to Padua, and it was a woman named Mama Isa who does cooking classes out of a beautiful apartment that she has
Okay.
there. It's a very
Yeah.
good. So I know how to make homemade pasta, and I've done it since. So I could do that.
Awesome. Now I'm hungry. I'm going to have to go and get some pasta now.
It's lunchtime.
Thank you again, Vicki. And we can find you also on what other social media platforms before we go?
Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Instagram being my favorite. So Instagram stories I do pretty much daily, which are really fun. And yes, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. I'm on LinkedIn. Yeah.
Awesome. And to
my
find your
favorites.
book?
You can find my book. You can either order it through the website or it is on Amazon, amazon.ca or amazon.com
Excellent.
as well. And you can get also a Kindle version if you're interested in it digitally. Not what I recommend, but you can get it if you want. Get my book about being offline online and read
Right.
it online too. Nothing ironic about that.
Thank you, Vicki. We'll chat soon. And if you'd like a copy of my book, Let Go, A Little Guidebook to Freedom, you can find it online at Amazon.com. Or you can find also the other book that I was part of called Positive Mental Attitude. You can also find that on Amazon, which actually went international bestseller, and we're quite happy with that. Click subscribe below if you are listening to this on YouTube. And please leave a comment. I'd like to hear from you. If you'd like to be a part of the podcast, you can reach out to me at support@antonyscandale.com. And if you'd like to visit me on my website, it's at antonyscandale.com. And remember, ignite your inner power and watch your world change. Take care, everyone.